Hi, I'm Tracy Lawson. I'm going to be reading to you today from the first chapter of Counteract, which is the first book in the Resistance series. Friday, October 21st, 2034, Quadrant OP 439, formerly suburban Columbus, Ohio, at 9:10 a.m. Corinne Ketcher was just a few steps from the front door of the History Building when a wave of panicked students poured out, driving her back into the quad. Someone's backpack knocked her coffee mug out of her hand. A guy she didn't know grabbed her roughly by the elbow and spun her around without breaking stride, dragging her with him as he ran. "Come on, didn't you hear? We're supposed to report to the student center." "Why? What's happening?" The first wail of the disaster siren drowned out his answer, and she cringed as they ran across campus in the growing stampede, thinking in a detached way that she'd picked the wrong day to be late for class. A frightened crowd gathered outside the university student center, pressing toward the doors and shouting over the siren. Corinne fought to keep her balance in the undulating mob. The shrieking siren stopped abruptly, and in the unnerving silence, phones all around her pinged with incoming messages. She dug hers out of her back pocket. "Campus alert! Shut up! It's a campus alert!" The murmurs spread and seemed to calm the crowd. Hundreds of phones played the message in near unison, magnifying the audio so it was easily heard. Moments ago, the Office of Civilian Safety and Defense confirmed that a chemical weapons attack against the United States is imminent. Terrorists have released a latent cocktail of poisons into the atmosphere where it can remain inert until such time as they choose to detonate it. You are directed to report to a designated distribution center in your area to receive an antidote that will protect you. Weekly allotments of this antidote will be provided free of charge for as long as the threat persists. The OCSD expects the terrorists to mount repeated attacks, so it is essential that you take the recommended daily dosage. Compliance is a small price to pay for your safety. Every face turned toward the cloudless blue sky as someone's sobs cut through the silence. 9:47 a.m. Corinne fidgeted as she stood in the slow-moving queue. She'd been anxious to get inside the building and away from the danger that lurked overhead, but the informational video playing in the vestibule did nothing to quell her fears. According to the video, an attack could occur at any time, and when it did, there would be no flash, no warning, no odor, and no place to hide. But taking the counteractive system of defense antidote would render the poison ineffectual. According to the video, the OCSD had the situation under control, and there was no reason to worry. But Corinne could think of plenty to worry about. For starters, she worried that, unlike her, most of the people in line seemed to dismiss the danger after they watched the video message. A group of girls behind her were chattering as if they were at a party. She could hear people all around her telling each other that it's just another attack. It's no big deal. We hear about them all the time. They wouldn't say that if they'd ever been in real danger. They honestly don't believe anything bad can happen to them. The workers distributed the antidote so slowly that Corinne feared the attack would be over long before she made it through the line, and though she hoped she'd be done in time for her afternoon classes, she knew she had no choice but to wait. Denying the threat wouldn't help, and a 4.0 GPA wouldn't save her. "Our protest might even get coverage on PeopleCam. My mom has a friend whose daughter knows a guy who works there. They're probably sending a crew over." Corinne looked around in amazement. "What are you protesting? Are you against taking the antidote?" The girl wrinkled her nose. "No, we're protesting against terrorism. Terrorism should stop right now. So once we take our antidote, we're going to stand outside and sing songs and show those terrorists that we're not afraid, like the flower children in Vietnam 100 years ago. Wow. Some of the pertinent details aside, Vietnam was still a totally different situation. Idiot. We can make a difference if we ask all the terrorists to give peace and understanding a chance. Oh my gosh, I bet none of our leaders ever thought to try that. You ought to call the president." The girl looked smug, and Corinne, already on edge, exploded. "Have you been living in some kind of reality-free zone? What do you know about protesting or terrorism or anything for that matter? You all might as well be a herd of sheep." The girl turned away and spoke loudly to her friends. "Did you hear what she just said? She's an authority on terrorism." Several people were staring in their direction, and one of the distribution workers patrolling the lines looked Corinne up and down and noted something on her clipboard. Defiantly, Corinne got out her own notebook and scribbled a few lines, mimicking the woman's actions. Soon the woman dropped her gaze and moved away, leaving only the buzz of quiet conversation to fill the void. Corinne tried to shut out the memories that replayed in her head, but she'd never forget the way the shards of glass and other debris had rained down on the cafe table that sheltered her, how her ears had rung from the blast and her eyes watered from the cloud of smoke and the dust that lingered. Most of all, she remembered the blinding flash of light and her father's hands on her back as he shoved her to the floor, hard. She hadn't seen that attack coming. She'd been a kid. Now that she was on her own, she had to take care of herself. She was startled out of her unpleasant meditation by an exasperated voice nearby. "But what's in it? Is it safe? Can you at least tell me if it's been tested?" A young couple was at the front of the line. A man leaned toward the distribution worker, palms planted on the table. "My wife is pregnant. She's not taking anything unless we know it's safe for her and the baby. Let me talk to whoever's in charge here." The people around Corinne began to shift and crane their necks to get a better view. She stood on tiptoe, hoping to hear the answer to his question, and watched with growing horror as a security officer grabbed the man and forced his arm back into a painful hold. His wife burst into tears as the guard shoved him through the crowd. He tried to twist free, but more guards surrounded them. Corinne heard the thwack of a nightstick, once, twice, 3 times. 2 guards dragged him toward the exit while another took his sobbing wife by the arm and forced her to follow. The door slammed shut behind them, and the remaining guards returned to their positions along the wall. No one in line made a sound. Corinne clutched her notebook to her chest and bowed her head. 9:59 a.m. Tommy Bailey lay tangled in his blankets, one arm hanging off the side of the bed. He usually slept soundly thanks to his pain meds, but not today. He opened his eyes, blinking back the bright sunshine that filled the room. What the hell was that noise? He glanced at his bedside clock. Only 10 a.m.? He'd have slept much later if not for that siren howling outside, but now that he was awake, he was curious enough to roll out of bed and hobble downstairs. The television in the living room was on, which was no surprise since it powered up automatically any time there was an important announcement or mandatory programming. He lowered himself onto the sofa to find out what was going on. OCSD expects repeated large-scale attacks. The National Weather Service, in cooperation with the OCSD, will monitor the atmosphere and report discernible toxin levels. The emergency broadcast system will conduct practice drills and notify the public in the event of an actual chemical attack. Remember, the antidote will counteract the effects of hazardous toxins if taken every day. So for the next 3 weeks, the emergency broadcast system will issue morning reminders to help everyone acclimate to the dosage schedule. Take action to protect yourself and your family. Your safety is our greatest concern. Go directly to the distribution center in your quadrant. The OCSD's PeopleNet address and an information hotline number flashed on the screen. Tommy shook the cobwebs from his head. Do I want to live or die? Shit, not again. 10:48 a.m. Tommy limped down the porch steps, crutches in hand. It was almost a mile to the nearest distribution center, and in his current state, traveling there and back on foot was going to take hours. He hadn't been that far from home on his own since before the accident. Just then, the mailman came up the walk with a pile of catalogs. Tommy knew without looking they'd be addressed to Laura Bailey. The mailman glanced at him uncomfortably and stepped around him to put the mail in the box. Thanks. Sure. You doing okay? Yeah. Tommy busied himself with his crutches. If you want to stop getting all them catalogs, you just got to message the companies, you know? Yeah, I'll get around to it. The mailman nodded and continued on his way. Tommy swung onto his crutches and headed toward the university campus, a little surprised that he wanted to live badly enough to get the antidote. I guess I still have some fight left in me, despite everything that's happened in the last 4 months. After the accident, he'd spent 2 weeks in the hospital, most of it a hazy memory distorted by pain and whatever it was that dripped numbingly into his veins from an IV line. 4 surgeries later, the shattered bones in his right leg were held together with metal plates and screws. His visible scars were healing, but the doctors offered no guarantees that he'd ever walk normally, let alone make a full recovery. To Tommy, a full recovery seemed impossible. He'd turned 18 while he was in the hospital. He hadn't been able to attend his parents' funeral. He wasn't sure how to live without everything he'd lost, but he guessed he hadn't given up. Not yet.